Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope everything is good and great and wonderful. Everything here is fantastic. I have the Kindle today because we're going to talk books, but I also have Christmas presents on the table that I need to take care of. But anyway, I've been reading a new series. I read the first two books in the series this weekend, and I want to talk about it. For a while now, I think years, multiple years now, I have been trying to find pulp fantasy. And what I mean by that is low stakes character pieces, right? Like the traditional pulp detective or pulp mystery or stories that aren't about, 30 volumes of world-saving whatever, just fun fantasy stories. And it's actually a really difficult thing to find. The vast majority of popular fantasy is epic fantasy. And trust me, I grew up on epic fantasy. I've read the classic epics that everybody points to. But there's a part of me that still wants just that popcorn read, that read that you're just like, I'm just looking for something fun today. Can I just read a fun story that doesn't take me forever? And so I've been looking for that. And recently on our fantasy Reddit/fantasy, the subreddit fantasy, I've seen that question come up quite a bit. It looks like there's a whole group of people out there looking for that kind of feel-good stuff that I'm looking for. And one of the series that gets constantly recommended on that subreddit is a series called Cradle by Wight. And the 8th book, I think it's called Winter Steel or something like that, just came out this year. And as part of that, Wight gave away the first 7 books for free. And so if you didn't catch that, sorry about your luck. But I guess he regularly gives them away. And so I downloaded the first 7 books. I've now read 2 of them, and I want to talk a little bit about it. Because it scratches that itch, but it's very, very different. For anybody who hasn't read the series and is looking for a fantasy series, I would say this is definitely a fantasy series. This is, lots of magic, but it's martial arts fantasy. And maybe that would be not what you're looking for. But it's also martial arts fantasy done in a non-traditional martial arts fantasy kind of way. The other thing that I've heard about this series, people call it progression fantasy, which, okay, I get it. Like, the entire plot of these books is this character gaining levels. And they're literally levels. Like, they call them levels, but they have, names for them. You go from wooden to iron to jade to gold, and so on. The other thing I will say is this is self-published. This is a self-published works. It's available on basically all the platforms. You could probably order paperbacks and stuff, but I just have the Kindle edition because that's what Will gave away. And I don't want to say, I hate saying self-publish is bad because it's not, but this feels self-published, at least the first 2 books. There are a whole lot of sections in these first couple of books where an editor really could have helped sell the points, and it's still a little fuzzy, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's detracting at all. It's just kind of... Alright, I'm trying to do this without spoilers. So, it's a martial arts fantasy that reads very much like a video game or a anime series. And in this series, you start off with a character in a section of the world that is like your first and second level section of the world. Like, nobody there is above second level, and so they have their own version of what that means, but as soon as you leave that area, it's suddenly more dangerous. And when you leave that area, it's suddenly more dangerous, right? So that's the kind of progression that's going to happen. It's also very intrinsic to the magic system and the cultural system that Will has devised in this book. The magic in this book is this vague kind of internal energy he calls Madra, and if you are really wanting to understand how the magic works, it's fully explained, but it's also still very confusing after 2 books. Like, I still don't quite understand what he means when he says that characters are going through cycling their Madra or whatever. Like, there's still a whole bunch of just fuzziness to it, even though the magic system is fully explained, and it's a very, very regimented magic system. You have to step through these levels to get anywhere in this world, and the world revolves around this magic system. Literally, society is built on, the wooden foundation members are lesser than the coppers, and the coppers are lesser than the irons, and basically an iron could kill one of their lowers without anybody caring, because that's their prerogative, because they've gained this rank. And it's a very, like, brutalistic structure where you've earned your next rank, and that means you can take it out on anybody below you if you want, because that's your right. But it's also a very honor-based society, and so there's a whole lot of that, Asian cultural influence, Chinese cultural influence specifically, that honor is super important. So you don't do things to dishonor your family, but also dishonoring, but cheating is not dishonor, because you're trying to win, and winning or being better is the higher precedent over the honor. So the first 2 books, Unsouled is the first book, and Soulsmith is the second book. Take our main character Lyndon from his home region, which is the low-level starting area of the RPG, and moves out into the bigger, wider world. The neat part about it all, first of all, I want to say that this is not a lit RPG book. It doesn't read like that at all. This is not explicitly given to you as a reader. Your understanding is not that this is a video game, or that this is some sort of anime or whatever. It's just the way it is, right? So all of that lit RPG stuff, right? And that's where the part I said earlier about having a good editor could have helped, because the thing about the lit RPG stuff, if you've ever read any of it, some of it can be kind of fun. It gives you, the reader, the foundation for understanding the progression of the character, right? Because it's just leveling, and the character has a heads-up display and can see his experience points and see where his skill trees are and all that sort of stuff. Whereas in this, it's more of a metaphysical kind of, the character understands that he has to be on a path, but he doesn't necessarily know what that means, and he doesn't have a manual to follow, even though most of the paths there's a manual, so you can follow that path. So he has abstracted out the video game elements and made it so that it is a part of the world. It's a part of everybody in this world's understanding. Everybody knows they're a character, and everybody knows that they're progressing along a designed path of, skills and techniques and all that sort of stuff. But that gets muddy as the reader, because it's not fully clear what's happening all of the time. It's kind of like, I don't know, was that a technique that he just used? Did he just do some martial arts move? But, suddenly there's doors flying apart and, structures burning down for no reason. And it can be a little bit weird. But it does definitely scratch that pulpy, like, quick read itch, because the books aren't super short. I mean, they're like 300 pages, so that's like 90,000 words or so. So they're not super short pulps, but they read very quickly because the pacing is very fast. It's constantly on the move. The main character is constantly, like, literally constantly fighting for his life, because he's the underdog essentially in this whole situation, this whole society. So he's constantly battling for his life, and it moves at a breakneck pace. I think that from the first book to here, we're like a couple of months in real world time. And crazy, battles and wars and all kinds of stuff has happened. So it's a very fast pace. And I'm glad I'm reading it. I'm very glad I'm reading it. It's been very fun to read just for the joy of it. Like, it's the main character in this story is very broken at the beginning. He's the boy under the stairs. He's just garbage. He's kind of spit on and looked down upon, and everybody could kill him for no reason at all by accidentally touching him too hard, because his body hasn't been strengthened by techniques and all that sort of stuff. And so you're sympathetic towards this kid because he's just like the complete loser. Like, he just can't do anything. And he fumbles his way through a whole bunch of very difficult situations, relying on trinkets that he keeps in his pack and just wits. He just keeps himself alive against people and beings that are so vastly more powerful than him. They seem godlike, right? And so we get to follow that character learning that he's not broken, that his elders didn't understand what he was and didn't understand how to shape him. So he was, born into a serious disadvantage, and now he gets to kind of learn to overcome all of that. And so it's just fun. Like, you feel for the guy. There are definitely moments where you feel very heartbroken for him because he's suffering tremendously. But there's also that also means that there's moments of joy when he escapes that, or when he survives that situation unscathed. And it's just been a very fun series to read. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely going to read the rest of the books. It's been a wonderful experience escaping from the very difficult reading that I'm doing for work right now, which is like technical manuals because I'm studying for a test, to just be able to jump into this and take a 10-minute break and read a chapter, because they're, very, very easy to read, short chapters, and really follow this kind of innocent guy on his path to trying to be somebody, right? And finding his way. So, the Cradle series by Will Wight, I think, based on the first two books, I'm all in. I'm going to keep going. But I will give you that caveat that this book relies very heavily on you understanding the magic and understanding the martial arts stuff. And it doesn't necessarily... It can be confusing sometimes. But if you can get past that, it's fine. It moves very quickly, and you won't be stuck in those confusing moments for very long. That's what I think. I would definitely say read it if you're looking for something to just kind of casually have on your phone or on your e-reader and pick up and read every now and then. It totally could be that kind of series. I think the other good part about it is Will explains a decent amount in the second book, but he doesn't necessarily reiterate everything that he told you in book one. So it's not like every time you're going to jump into a new book, you're going to have to, reread the same lessons about the magic system and about the world. He doesn't necessarily just regurgitate that constantly like I've seen with other fantasy series. But that being said, he also doesn't skim over stuff. Like, he doesn't just trust that you understand when he says she used her technique to do this. He explains it almost every time. So it is that kind of book that you can read a chapter and then put it down for a month and come right back to it, and it'd be great. You'd still be reading just as, you don't need to burn through these like I am. I just happen to have some time to read. Okay, that's what I got to say. Cradle series by Will Wight. Go check it out. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is disparate. It is an adjective meaning describes two or more things that differ greatly from one another and cannot be logically reconciled. As if the disparate halves of things were waiting in a betrothal known to none. Wallace Stevens, an American modernist poet. Disparate. D-I-S-P-A-R-A-T-E.